Hi, it's me, Emmy, and today we have another episode of A Wheel of Time, episode 3. Oh, yay! My recap and review. Obviously, it is chock full of spoilers. I am calling it a recap. We open episode 3 on Nynaeve being dragged away by that Trolloc from episode 1 back at Two Rivers. The only reason Nynaeve gets an opportunity to run away and essentially escape is because the Trolloc becomes distracted by another wounded Trolloc. It seems like duty binds them to each other to put them out of their misery, or maybe they just have like a more complex inner life. But I kind of liked this moment where we saw that like the Trolloc put down like essentially his job to go and gore this other Trolloc and put it out of its misery, or maybe it's like a primal thing. I don't know. Nynaeve takes this opportunity to escape back to her home turf, the water pools in the village. She uses the pools to hide and basically like conduct a sneak attack on this Trolloc by luring him into the water and using his own knife to kick his ass. Honestly, it was a very terrifying sequence, like watching her go under the water with the Trolloc to emerge victorious, of course, as we know she would, but like still, she comes out and she's a different person, and we see this as she flips her hair over her shoulder and we see it's not braided anymore. Recap. Nynaeve emerges. She's fucking victorious. She has a machete. She's ready to go. Back to Nynaeve and Lan in the present. Nynaeve demands to know where the 4 kiddos are at, and Lan plays it cool, kind of like trying to disarm her a little bit. Nynaeve is not buying it, and to be fair, he does kind of push her button and dare her to try to kill him. He says she won't do it, but this is fucking Nynaeve. We saw her with that Trolloc. We know she's going to do it. She tries to kill him. Lan is as surprised as all of us, and he seems a little impressed, but he does knock her out and take her captive because he's like a trained warrior, and it makes sense, but like, damn, girl. Look, the point is, good for you for trying, girl. Mat and Rand both do a total 180 on the whole White Tower situation. Ever since Rand and Egwene silently held hands in the Lost City, he's been planning their life together again. Mat wants to return home to his sisters and take care of them. At this juncture, he doesn't see a point in forging on to the White Tower. Rand, of course, sees his future, Egwene, at the White Tower and needs to make sure that she's safe. He insists that they forge on. Perrin and Egwene, meanwhile, emerge from the water that they jumped into at the end of last episode, episode 2, and are then pursued pretty much immediately by a pack of wolves, similar to those that licked Perrin's leg last episode. Fucking forgot about that because I didn't, and I never will. Egwene politely lets Perrin try to start a fire in a very cute moment before she just does the damn thing. Egwene confides in Perrin that she suspects Rand probably headed back home and that they should too. What's the point? But Perrin pushes back against that. It's not really his optimism that is encouraging him to try and convince Egwene. It's his unwillingness and his lack of desire to return home, where he feels like he can never go back after killing his wife. There is an urgency in his voice to convince her. He can't go back. He can never go back, and he can't go at it alone either. We return to Nynaeve, being held captive by Lan, who again asks for her help in healing Moiraine. Nynaeve says that if she helps Moiraine, she will expect to be shown where those kids are. Lan is like, are you in a position to be making demands? Which, are you? Nynaeve clarifies, like, it's not a demand, that was a threat. Lan is really struggling with his control issues as Nynaeve navigates the forest to find necessary herbs. He basically watches her creepily in the forest, and she's like, dude, just like ask me what you want to ask me. Lan is like, okay, how did you track me through the forest? I love Nynaeve. She's like, I said you could ask, not that I'd answer. Also want to know. Oh, and he's obviously very impressed. Lan follows her to go and heal Moiraine. He's gobsmacked. We're all feeling it. We watch her prepare this like ooey gooey mixture that I could live without. As a warden to an Aes Sedai, Lan feels what Moiraine feels. Nynaeve warns him that what she's about to do is gonna sting a little. You would not know it watching him. Watching him watch Moiraine is all I want. And then they just have to give it time, which sucks because they really don't have time. That's like the running thing through the show. It's like everything is like time. Then back to Perrin and the Thunderstorm. Ew! We must be in a dream in this sequence because we're back at the forge. I liked this sequence a lot more than the other dream sequences Perrin may or may not have had thus far, because this one was very clearly defined as a dream sequence. Like pursued and mirrored by the ember-eyed figure that we've been seeing throughout the series. He comes across his late wife's body being gored by wolves, those same wolves we saw in real life. He wakes up and he realizes like Egwene has been trying to wake him up because the wolves are getting closer. Wolves essentially chase them to the edge of the forest, but then they don't pursue them any further, suggesting that the wolves only intended to chase them out of the forest and they didn't have a reason to pursue them beyond that. Why would the ember-eyed Fade in his dreams, which appeared in the same dream as the wolf, want to keep the group headed towards the White Tower? Maybe it's just something I don't know about yet. But Egwene is also suspicious. Rand and Mat are really exuding those odd couple vibes that you get. Like when one friend is like newly in love and the other one is in like a deep, deep Dorito-sustained depression. There's some banter traveling through what Mat is convinced is just gonna be open wastes. They come across a town. As they approach town, Mat sees a prisoner hanging dead in a cage, and he sees that this prisoner has some shiny bits on him, so he's gonna revisit that later. Then he gets mildly insulted by Rand's insistence that they can't buy any beer and they only have enough money for fucking food. Ugh. We really see that Rand has become the business boy. Mat has been grown, but he's grown different. You know what I mean? He's built different, I guess. Rand and Mat head to the local inn where a musician, ostensibly named Tom, is performing. I don't buy it. I don't think he's just a musician. Something tells me. I don't know. Mat insults Tom for no reason when Tom swings by to chat and solicit tips. But then it comes time for Mat and Rand to pay for their food, and they discover that Mat's coin purse had been lifted. Tom is the one to reveal this to them because he stole the coin purse back. Because Mat insulted him, Tom keeps the coin purse and chalks it up as a very expensive lesson. And you know, you got me there, Tom. The best lessons in life often are expensive. Even though the wolves aren't actively in pursuit, they are still observing and following Egwene and Perrin from afar. Perrin and Egwene stumble across wagon tracks, and they agree to keep a safe distance both from the wolves and whoever the wagon tracks belong to. It seems like the wagon and their horde are headed east towards the White Tower as well. Rand and Mat approach the innkeep for a place to sleep in exchange for work. Mat is a total dick about it and refuses to play ball when Rand gets them a cushy gig splitting wood in exchange for shelter. He goes inside and leaves Rand to wood splitting and sees the innkeep, who he is trying to bang, but the innkeep gives him a job instead and he gets to work. She waxes poetic to Mat about running away to a new land with no attachments, and Mat, you can see, is bitter. He kind of flips on a switch here and gets dark. He mentions that he has people that he can't just forget. His little sisters. He'll get back to them at whatever cost. Conversation really wasn't that deep, but he made it that deep. Back with Lan, Nynaeve, and Moiraine. Nynaeve expresses concern at the rate that the treatment is progressing. Just then, Lan hears something in the distance and pursues it. He mounts his horse and just takes off as Nynaeve is calling after him. It seems like their dynamic has shifted very quickly. The fact that he's willing to now leave Nynaeve with Moiraine is pretty telling. Perrin and Egwene approach a suspicious forest entrance where Egwene assures a very shaky, unsure Perrin that he doesn't need to protect her. He wasn't responsible for his wife's death, and he doesn't need to feel responsible for Egwene's safety now. I didn't take this as like him being like white knighty or anything. I think he genuinely feels responsible for the safety of the people around him. The group approach the forest entrance and they get a very dramatic and funny reveal of the traveling people who ask Egwene and Perrin if they know the song. They don't know the song, but the group, the traveling people, still take them in and feed them. They're a nomadic group that takes in stray cats like our little stray cats, Egwene and Perrin, who chow down gratefully on the food provided and seem to be in safe harbor for now. They seem really nice, the traveling people, I mean. I hope it stays that way. Back at the inn, as the innkeep shows Rand, Mat and Rand's room for the night, she jokes about their relationship and Rand clarifies that there's nothing romantic between them because he could do better in a man. Cute little moment that opens Rand up to the idea of getting drunk with this stranger. So that's what they do. Back to Moraine, she's stirring just as Lan returns to them. He asks if Moraine is well enough to ride, and Nynaeve says that the poultice will only provide a temporary boon to her health. We pivot back to Mat, who we see eyeing the dead caged prisoner from earlier and its jewelry. And he nearly gets his ass whooped spaghetti western style in the next second by our crooner Tom from earlier. Tom is here to cut down the caged prisoner, who is an Aiel. An Aiel. Tom can tell by the color of the fiery hair. We only get glimpses of it, but we can also see markings on the skin of visible parts of the face. Mat points out that Aiel are said to be as dangerous as Trollocs. Tom rejects this notion and says that they're honor-bound fighters in the Aiel wastes. You only need to fear for your life in the presence of an Aiel if their veil is raised onto their face. We can see that the veil of this prisoner was not raised, and therefore they did not pose a threat to the townspeople, who Tom says basically killed this Aiel out of fear. I'm looking forward to learning more about this, and I think the way the show is handling this exposition is very well done without being info dumpy. Mat admits that he came to rob this dead body that he saw had valuables on its person because he wants to charter a way back home to his sisters. Tom, turns to let Mat loot the body with his blessing. He's very merciful and kind to Mat over the course of their interaction here. Fortunately, Mat shows a little heart too and treats the body with respect. They then go on and bury it together. Meanwhile, the innkeep is playing reindeer games with Rand back in their room, trying to suss out what brought Mat and Rand here. Rand, fortunately for him, is not as dumb as he is hot. So he's playing his cards pretty close to the chest. He's a good boy. That is, until he starts leaning in and you're totally like, oh my god, either Rand is either hot to trot with this lady, which is the message he's sending, or he really is as dumb as he is hot for thinking that he's not sending all kinds of mixed messages. Okay, raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by a hot person leaning in, engaging you with their eyes when they're telling a story. Naturally, she tries to kiss him because he's leaning in. He's doing the kissing thing, right? Rand pulls away because he's an honorable boy and his heart is somewhere else. She gets up to go and close the door and she says, oh, you guys, she says, was it the hair? I knew I shouldn't have braided it. It makes me look too much like her, doesn't it? She keeps him locked in this room with her and informs him that he and Mat are a package deal, so they've got to wait for Mat to come back to the room. Meanwhile, back with Mat and Tom bonding, Mat asks for his coin purse back, and Tom goes to hand it back to him before realizing that Mat had pilfered it back already and was just testing Tom. And Tom advises him to be careful and takes his leave, and then Mat heads off into town. The innkeep informs Rand that she had a door installed made to withstand the force of 3 men twice Rand's size, so there's no way he's going to be able to break it open. And will he please stop because he's being really annoying about it. That must have been infuriating for her to just keep watching Rand launch himself at the door. Even more fucking infuriating must be the moment when the door fucking falls and they both look at each other and they realize that door should not have broken under the force of Rand's fragile human body. Its development, not least of all Rand, who apparently did not know he was capable of hulking out. Then he just bolts. He runs into Mat in town and they just take off, and every frame of Mat's face in this fucking chase scene is a fucking painting. But eventually they are cornered by the innkeep, and we learn that the innkeep serves the Dark One. She wants to serve up the Dragon Reborn, not that they know who it is, but it's one of the 4, to the Dark One so that she's remembered for all of time. Just like they remember the name of the person, Ishmael, who brought the dragon to the Dark One 3,000 years ago. I guess she's counting on some nepotism points in the end of days, but it does kind of seem like if you're bringing about the end of reality, which is what the Dark One wants to do, wouldn't that bring about the end of memory too? I don't know. The innkeep Dana lays out the philosophy of the Dark One. The Dark One basically wants to crush the wheel of time, ending reality, ending suffering, ending pain. As the wheel keeps turning, it keeps hurting people and keeps crushing people. She says that the dragon can crush the wheel and make it stop. That's an interesting theory we should take with us going forward when we evaluate Moraine's philosophy, because we already have established in universe that she's ready and willing to make sacrifices in the name of her mission. So to keep the Dark One and the end of the Wheel of Time at bay, what else is she willing to sacrifice? Who else is she willing to sacrifice? They inform her they're gonna go, but she's like, nah. She already called an eyeless, one of the Fade, and there is no outrunning a Fade. And then bam, a fucking knife in her neck, dude. Just like a knife right in the neck. And we see the knife, the boys see the knife, and then we see Tom through the knife. Can you believe? See, I told you he wasn't a musician. They're kind of in shock, but Tom's like, we need to go. We need to go. He throws some helpful expositional lingo at them by referring to the innkeep as a dark friend, that is, a servant of the Dark One. But it does feel like this time would be better spent running, and Tom agrees, so he takes off. And even though Rand is reluctant, he is swayed by Mat's slow realization that Tom is the really only hope for survival. So they follow. We return to Nynaeve, Moraine, and Lan on horseback. She's starting to get impatient just as more Aes Sedai show up. We see that it is the red-cloaked Aes Sedai group from earlier in the series, episode 1, where we opened on them murdering a man. Do you remember that? Moraine and the leader of this red-cloaked Aes Sedai group, Liandrin, seem to know each other. And Liandrin goes out of her way to start bragging that they caught the Dragon Reborn, or at least a man claiming to be the dragon. She shows off a caged man to our party, and we see Moraine is very uneasy at this development. And we end the episode on this man's unsettling and inscrutable gaze. It seems like Moraine is pretty sure that it was one of the 4. Let me know what you think in the comments below about this newcomer to our dragon pool, and I'll see you next time for more Wheel of Time. Until then, subscribe, hit like, go follow my Twitter, Instagram, OnlyFans. I'm Emmy Speens everywhere. I love you. Goodbye.